And we're going to keep doing the same sort of format we've been working with for our last part of the time together today. And let me just thank you again for being here. It's always fun to describe and share things that mean something to us as presenters and to see engagement from you, which is great. I'm going to just mention one more time, as I said, there are books over there. There's materials over there from the three organizations that are present. There is a sign-up sheet, just so you know what that's about. That's for a newsletter that Science for the Church puts out weekly that comes into your inbox. And the relevance particularly of that is this week we did, or I actually wrote an article on a conversation I had with Len on this very topic. So I've got a screenshot of the cover of that, but that's what that sign-up is for. I don't want anybody to be misled on that. I think those are the major logistical questions or comments I have. So let's get back into the topic. Margie, are we good? Destination check? Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look I'm going to look at the definition of love, the nature of love. And then the second part, for me, I'm going to look at what happens when we let our brains saturate on love. So the first is, what does love mean? And the second is, how do we begin to what's one way to help us be changed by that? And then that's going to correlate with what Len brings in terms of the neuroscience related to this. So as I said before, I had 6 total passages that were queued up for today, but I'm a jazz musician and sometimes you improv. And improv means sometimes you leave something out, and so if anybody does want to get more material of either if you're online or in person, let me know, and you can just email me, and I'll be happy to send you the slides. So if you want to come with a definition of love, definitions come in all kinds of varieties, right? I mean, that's just the nature of definitions. We really believe that love is, we technically call in the linguistic and philosophical world, polyvalent, right? There's a lot of elements of what love is. You could say love is willing and working for another's best. Willing and working for another's best. That would be a pretty good general definition. But in another way, what we look at here in this passage is what love does. Love is an action, at least again defined by this Jesus spirituality we're looking at as the formation of Christian spirituality. And sometimes we're better off, I've said this earlier, but I want to say it again. Sometimes instead of thinking of a theoretical and a kind of perfect world and then seeing how it becomes part of the material world, that's how Plato thought of, there's this perfect world that exists out there and it descends into our world as something less than the perfect. Sometimes we do that with definitions. We think, well, what's this big definition and how does it work out in the world? What I want to do is tell you how it works out in the world and then begin to demonstrate that our job, if we're going to follow into this line of Christian spirituality, is to enter into doing it. And then we begin to see what love means and is, if that makes sense. I'm going to do one more piece for those of you who are theologically minded. So in theology, if you're going to create a system of teaching or doctrine, the way this was traditionally done followed the Platonic form. You thought about the biggest concepts, and then you began to see how those worked out practically, like doctrines of God and humanity and creation. And then you said, well, what's the practical theological implications? This was reversed about 30 or 40 years ago by a move called liberation theology, which said, let's reflect on practice or praxis, and then we understand our theory. You don't start to go theory, then practice. You actually look at practice and you go back and say, what's your theory? Now, I'm going to actually recommend this. I'm getting off scripture for a minute, but I'm going to recommend this as something that's really important for our groups and communities and individuals, because we don't always know what our motivations and our theories are, really, until we see how we practice them. So you want to know how loving you are? This is a very Jesus kind of thing to say. How do you look at your neighbor in need? That's going to determine whether you really understand the definition of love following the Christian spiritual tradition. Then in Paul, I think we read exactly this. So Paul is writing again. This is another one of his letters. This is how most New Testament is formed, is through letters. Many of them have the name of Paul on them. This is one to the Corinthian church. So Corinth, of course, in modern day Greece today, these little churches, really, meaning these little house communities with this new movement. Paul gets to a point of defining or demonstrating what love is. Now, often if you've gone to weddings, Christian weddings, you'll see this passage read. If you watch Wedding Crashers, the movie, they bet on whether this or another passage is going to be read, and Owen Wilson, I think, wins the bet of that. So, in the Wedding Crashers, Max, is that right? Okay, just yeah. So this is a passage you hear in weddings, but really Paul meant it for the Christian movement, the community. All of these words are verbs in the original Greek. It's really important to take that in. Now, this is the problem of translation. It's hard to render those in English as verbs. So these are verbs. Love is an action. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love, here we could say, does not envy, does not boast, is not arrogant, not rude. And here's one of the keys in this other giving love, this gift love. Love does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable. It keeps no record of wrongs. Does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And Paul goes on to say, love never ends. Such a good poem. This is a great poem. Can I just read it one more time for you? Is that all right? This is what I want you to be letting your mind, if you're willing, to be reformed by this vision of love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. Love does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable. It's not resentful. It keeps no record of wrongs. Does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. What Paul's talking about here, I think he's seeking here to understand what's this thing that Jesus was trying to initiate through the people that followed him. He's trying to express that and bring it out to the communities around him, is that there's a love that is active, the love that changes us in the way we saw that our brain gets changed. There's a love that is a gift to others. So one of the key things that many commentators have talked about here is the word that's used in the Greek text is agape. And one of the fascinating parts about the Greek language is that it has different words for love. We have one word, right? Love. But Greek has at least two, it has four words really, but the two of them are really important. Love is agape, that's the word being used here, and love, that's eros, which we think of as passionate love, but love between, sexes. But it could also be, Plato talks about the eros for learning, so you can just be passionately engaged in things. Now, agape is not a pristine word, it has different definitions in the New Testament, but it's a word that the New Testament writers picked up and made something new out of it. So one of the degrees I did before I started doing study of religion and theology was a degree in ancient Greek and classical texts. And when you looked at this word agape, it was very, very rarely used, just kind of a sidebar word. It was often meant just as a greeting. You just greeted somebody. And so actually way back in Berkeley in undergrad, I wrote a paper about the use of agape, and I think it was Xenophon or something. Xenophon was one of the other Greek writers in the New Testament. It was really fascinating to me. I don't know what my professor thought of it, but I love learning about it. So what the New Testament does is it takes this concept of gift love and gives it a word that wasn't used very much and defines it. One of the things about writing is each writer gets to give you what's called in philosophy a stipulative definition. They can stipulate what they mean by this word, how they describe it. And so here the New Testament is saying, well, this is how we're going to use this word agape in a new way to describe something different. And I balk a little bit at the word unconditional love because it sounds like a blank category to me. So I understand it's very commonly used. So I'm not trying to pick any fights here, but I think it's better as gift love. Len let the cat out of the bag. C.S. Lewis is one of my mentors and student of languages and of ancient cultures, modern cultures. He described this word agape as gift love. And the point being, it's that you're giving something before you get something in return. You're giving something to people. Sometimes you're even giving something to people who don't deserve it. That's the point of this kind of love. We're trying to, remember, this is all about community. How do you create a community? When you give, instead of take all the time, if the world is just give and take, he's taking and I'm giving, as I once heard in a song, right? That's not a very good world. But it's a world where there's this mutual giving. Not 50-50. Len and I actually came up with this little saying separately. It's not 50-50 world. It's 100-100 world. Where we, as best we can, we give 100% of this love. Now, I can get into the spiritual connections of this. There's a sense that we are able to do this as we understand our own belovedness, for sure. But the form of love is one of gifting, of giving, of looking toward the other. That's what the New Testament and the Jesus movement and Jesus' own words describe as this form of love, and the form that really changes us and creates community. I'll say one more thing before I read the passage one more time. One of my other colleagues in this world of science and religion is Justin Barrett. He actually coined the term cognitive science of religion. That's pretty cool. We did a project together on science and faith. And one of the things he says that's very challenging to understand for many people is love that isn't gifting, that isn't for the sake of encumbering the other person. A gift that's truly a free gift. So my parents, not to pick my parents, because I love my parents, but grew up in a time where if you got a Christmas card, the worst thing in the world is if you didn't send them a Christmas card, right? You got that Christmas card, you better get an envelope out and send them one, right? Make sure they get it before Christmas. And this idea that if somebody gives you a gift, you owe them something. It's a different kind of love. It's a free gift. It's a gift that you give. And I think if you've been, like I've learned from Len over I guess about a year and a half, we've been working together on this material, this changes us. Yeah, it may feel like you're just giving out, but it's actually you receive and get changed and renew. Let me just read this one more time and I'll pass the mic, as it were. Love is patient. Agape, gift love, is patient, kind, not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. Love, agape, gift love, does not insist on its own way, not irritable. It keeps no record of wrongs. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things.
We had a question from Charlotte. Would you ask it, please?
All right, so I work in a population with foster and adopted kids and their families. And a lot of our kids have experienced prenatal exposure to drugs and alcohol, and then severe neglect. So like in the first years of their life, they weren't held. You know, maybe they got nutrition, but it was a bottle and a car seat. They were left in rooms. They were sometimes experiencing trauma, and I'm curious how this affects their oxytocin level. I know how it affects their attachment, because oftentimes that's what the problems are. They're having a lot of attachment issues. So I'm curious about, are they able to then, like, is this something you have to get within a certain period of time in your life, and then you're going to have a struggle later on if you're not getting it within a certain window, your ability to make oxytocin? And then is there a way that you can kind of heal some of those wounds that happen in that early time if it is disrupting their attachment?
Great question. And a lot of the work that underpins what we understand about that was done as children from the Romanian orphanages were adopted by folks here in this country, in Great Britain and so forth. The Ceausescu regime required that both parents work. And so they put together large orphanages that were staffed by nurses who had clean bassinets. The babies were not neglected in the sense that you would find a soiled baby or a hungry baby, but they were not loved. And they were in their bassinets for a long time. We know that that creates lifelong problems. We also know that one of the things, for example, that's important to pay attention to at a genetic level, the oxytocin and vasopressin molecule are in the same chromosome, very near each other. And the oxytocin molecule is positively expressing. What I mentioned that earlier. What does that mean? It means that as the oxytocin gets expressed in the person, it produces more oxytocin. Now, the classic example is birth, but it happens in any oxytocin experience. And so to the degree that the child goes into a loving foster family and needs more loving oxytocin, touch, cuddling, wonderful words, then the oxytocin begins to be produced more and more and more. I'm the eldest of 21 children, 15 of which are foster kids. And I saw it up close and personal. Kids would come in, sometimes well-mothered, sometimes not, often not, but really seemed to respond to love. At first, they were very protective and very easily frightened. And as the crises came up and they were handled by a wonderful mother I had, who was an orphan herself and knew firsthand, had a sense of what children need. There was a lot of healing that you could almost, on a day by day. I had our first orphan was Brian. He was 7 years old. He came in and he actually shared a bedroom with me. And over the period of a couple of weeks, in Brian's living with us, an odor began to appear in the bedroom that I didn't appreciate. And so I complained to my mother. My 17-year-old self went to Brian stinks. And my mother said, calm down, let me check it out. Brian had been soiling his underpants as he slept. And because he could not get up to go to the bathroom because Jehovah's alligators would get him, which is how his grandparents, to whom he had been abandoned by his birth mother, had kept themselves to be able to get a full night's sleep. And my mother and dad and the rest of us did the best we could to help Brian get beyond that belief, that dominant neural network that was controlling his life. And we did every practical thing you can do, and it worked. And he went on. He was when at my mother's celebration of life, he was there, and wonderful. So, and by the way, he left that foster home, our foster home, after about 1.5 years, and was placed in an adoptive family, and that did not work out. Crushed him. He came back to our family for another 3 or 4 months and went out to a successful adoptive family. And so his resilience was boosted. He didn't collapse as a 9-year-old when his first adoptive parents said, "It's not working out, Brian. We'll see you later." So one of the things that is important to pay attention to is that the neural network has redundancy, and it's very plastic. And oxytocin is a lubricant and a supporter of that plasticity. A real simple example I was talking with Bill about a moment ago. As we are learning, you can have an oxytocin experience in a graduate study group because you've got the graduate students there. The oxytocin experience in a graduate study group is accompanied by a boost of dopamine, which which is the pleasure that you're getting out of studying together and learning something and feeling more competent. And what we recently learned was that oxytocin promotes the development of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which supports the learning. And so there's all kinds of things that are benefited by this incredible neuropeptide that got started 500 million years ago. And it's part of the excitement that I have about studying this stuff. There's been an explosion in the past 15 years, and the explosion is accelerating with regard to what we're going to learn about polyvagal theory and oxytocin. Well, I'm excited about it because I think it's going to make a huge difference in how we treat children. And another just final word, actually, I'm going to stop there because I've got all kinds of things we can talk about.
You go for your slides? I got everybody. Want to take a pause here for an exercise. You want to go to your slides?
What kind of exercise would you like to do?
I was going to do one more sharing kind of exercise.
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
That's all right. Okay. You can see this is amazing to teach with Lent. I mean, it's incredible. It's all moved by this. Such great material. In fact, I'm having trouble finding my slides because of it. So we want to make sure that you take some time to neuroconsolidate, and so this is going to be a chance to do that. So let's see. This is why I have to get trained professionals. I get caught up in these stories about lives like that and how they can still be changed. That's amazing. I mean, that's the good news is very consistent with Christian spirituality. So may I just say that this is the good news of, I think, what we're hearing about our brains is there's the opportunity for something new. That's what I want.
Sharing that.
Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to give you some chance to, let's see if I can, yeah. To give you some chance to just do some more work together. Again, this is a symposium, so we want to give some time to talk with one another. So I'm going to have this in a stepped form, but I want you to write out a statement of love as you're hearing it through the New Testament text, include the neuroscience. It's great. We see a lot of connection between those, and then we'll share what we've written. So here's a little bit more of a three-part form, and this is. I'm trying to engage people who may be the more introverted side, right? I want to take a little time to reflect on things first before you are forced to, or whatever, encouraged to share with one another. So my encouragement for you, if you want to do this, again, these are invitations, is write out a summary of what Jesus is teaching and Paul is teaching as a derivative of Jesus' teaching, how they connect. But we would want to focus on that, this gift love, the centrality of love for the Spirit. So we're going to take a few minutes on that. I'll signal you, and then you're going to share what you've written in whatever way you want to with one another. So it's just adding a step to what we did before. First, introspection, reflection, then a sharing. And then we will share that in the broader group and see if we can connect online and in person together. Does that make sense? So let's take... I never give people enough time. My students always tell me there's not enough time. So what if we take just 3 or 4 minutes to just write out, just about 2 or 3 sentences, not a huge thing. What are you pulling out from these materials? And then we'll share them with one another, which I'll signal for you. That work? Good? Okay. I'm going to pause the recording. All right, we're starting again, and I've got the online group also. So what if we do a little of that sharing again? It is good for us, good for brain work. I hope however you come to today, we can agree that love is a good thing to grow in. So meaning, however, if you come from the Christian tradition or not, this is a topic, I think, of interest to human beings as a whole, right? So let's talk about love and what you discussed in your groups. Let's do the same thing. Just a few conversations in the online group is also welcome to share. So anybody want to go ahead with something you talked about? Yes, Tim.
Dave and I came up with the same thing. It must be, we talked about it it's the sum of the parts that it's made up of, like a car.
Yeah.
Box and its wheels and it's the motor and it's the gas tank and it's the steering wheel.
Yeah.
So, so love is the expression of goodness and kindness and patience, self-control and faith, affection, generosity, care. Let's go on and on and on and on. All these things of caring for someone else.
I love that. I'm just searching because I want to just point up a scripture we're not going to get to. Oops, this is the next exercise. If we get there.
That's also first chapter of 2 Peter.
Yeah. When I was going to use it up there, it's Galatians 5.
Yeah.
So this is directly related to the work of the Spirit in the language of the New Testament, thus spirituality. And just like you said, love is the first of those 9 characteristics listed, but most commentators say that, or many do. Exactly. It's the way. So I was just trying to collaborate with you a little bit awkwardly there, but thank you. I think that's right. So there's another way, like goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, all those things. You named a number of those. Thanks, Tim.
And Dave started.
Oh, Dave, sorry. You were the spokesperson always gets the credit, you know. All right. Who else would like to share something? Yes, Lou.
In all those words, there's no laws against or for it. Or if you don't do it, the opposite of love is full of laws, consequences.
Interesting. Yeah. Other thoughts?
Nargis online wants to share.
Yeah, go ahead, Nargis.
So I talked to the person that I was with in the breakout room. I was like, I don't know about the New Testament. I never read about it, but if we can see, as I mentioned, it's kind of the idea is general for all the religions. So when it comes to the love, as I was growing up, my mom would always mention we have to all love one another, or respect and all that. So integrity. So it's kind of relating. So I was like, and she explained really, I think she mentioned a verse that was really touching. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the things that when I do the class of religions at Chico State, one of the most common sayings among religious teachers is what Jesus said about love. You know, love others as you want yourself to be loved, right? And Muhammad has a hadith that's very similar to that. So an artist from the Muslim tradition, you can see this as a common thread. And I could do many more of those, but this is something we can agree on, right?
Yeah.
That love is really important.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Maybe one more. As I said, I want to give Len a little space, or a lot of space, actually. Yes.
So, I did a study on 1 Corinthians 13, trying to break it down structurally. And I found that, it's mostly negative. Love's mostly negative. He's 8 things. It's not this and not that. But he heads it, love is patient and kind. John made this little 1-line drawing. There's the 2 things that focus on love is patient and kind. And at the bottom, he seems to expand on it. So there's the active and there's the passive, right? The kindness is things you're doing. And he says the things the love is kind. It's bearing other people's burdens, other things, and it believes in that person. And then the more passive is the patience. That's the hoping and the enduring of things.
Yeah.
So just breaking it down to a binary there.
I love that. Thank you. It's 8 and 5, I think, right? Isn't that what it is? 8 negatives, 5 positives.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And John also does this with 1 pencil stroke. So you should look at one of his pieces. Yeah, it's very interesting what he does. Yes, Len. Why do you want us to come up?
I want to ask you.
Yeah.
How about the indigenous religions we have?
Yeah.
You've studied that.
Yeah.
How is that sort of thing expressed in their canon?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's funny or unusual about Native spirituality is you have so many different traditions, and sometimes they come through stories, right? And so I think the way I'm just thinking the Solonen story of creation, which Solon is their Salinas, that's where that tribe was. They really talked about the way that we love a very interconnected world, right? So it's a lot about other animals. In fact, the other animals are ones that teach us how to love and how to care for the interconnection we have. Because this is going to be a longer answer than maybe you're thinking, but just like in the Genesis text, the animals are created first, and then human beings. This is also Robert Kimmerer's point in braiding sweetgrass, is that there's a way that the Native American traditions or the Native traditions, indigenous traditions, take that to say, we can learn from the animals. We're like the last people to get here, so we can learn from them. We can learn from them how to interconnect, how to care, and it would be that same kind of approach of it's the working and willing another's best and seeking to do no harm in that. And that seeking to do no harm is one of the classic neo-pagan traditions as well. So there's definitely a symbiosis. And I guess I'll just speak as a Christian when I say this, that in that I believe that the Creator has made these structures in the world that no matter how you get to them, the structure of if you care for people, life can go better, you know? And one of the elements that's given us as Homo sapiens the ability to flourish is when we care and cooperate, you know? So I think that's, just to go back to Native American traditions, indigenous traditions, they really see that in a widely connected web. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, it's helpful.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to give you
We've got so much material. I want to be able to give you something that's useful. Let me go ahead to take a look at the vagal nerve. And the reason the vagal nerve is useful to us is that it's the core of what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. You have the sympathetic nervous system that ramps you up and gets you into fight or flight mode. And whenever you're challenged, it's there to take care of you. The parasympathetic nervous system downregulates you, calms you down. And like every neural network, and this is a monster neural network, like every neural network, the more you use it, the healthier it is. One of the reasons that I'd like you to know about it is that anxiety, the baseline anxiety level of our country, and I think the world over the last few years has gone up. And we can take medication and alcohol and locally herbs to be able to get it back down. Or we can do a better job in triggering our parasympathetic nervous system. And one of the ways to trigger the parasympathetic nervous system is to do belly breathing. Would everybody, hello. Would everybody kind of loosen or lower your belt, put your feet on the floor, get comfortable, and take a couple of really deep belly breaths. Hold the diaphragm fully open. Do this tonight as you're in bed, and you will, if you pay attention to it, you will notice your feet relaxing a little bit, your fingers relaxing a little bit. You may even feel a little bit dizzy, and you're okay because you're already in bed, you're not going to fall. It will help you get into sleep right away. I have a hard time with sleep. I've always had a hard time with sleep. So I've got these strategies. An important strategy for me is triggering the parasympathetic nervous system. What you see here is that it starts in the brainstem and goes out to lots of different parts of the body. These are the cranial nerves. We've got 12 cranial nerves. Basically, they're in the brainstem right here, and they go, almost all of them just spend their time up here. Cranial nerve 10, CNX, Roman numeral 10, is the vagus nerve, and it goes down to your sphincter. If you want it down there, yep, it's working down there. And it's relaxing your sphincter. When your sphincter gets tight, and by the way, when you go to bed, one of the things that's really good to do is have a bowel movement before you go to bed. This is probably the only course that Bidwell Press has sponsored where we talk about taking a crap before you go to bed. Does that happen?
I haven't been to one that's done that.
That's right. Well, the point is that you want not to have any remnants of your sympathetic nervous system hanging on to your sphincter. You need to let it relax. And making fun of that, but the point is that once you relax, once you exercise your vagus nerve system, then the whole system becomes more useful, more helpful, stronger, healthier. And the amazing thing about it is that it's only about 80,000 nerves coming out of the bottom of the brain. You've got 100 billion nerves. X marks the spot. This is actually a human brain. And by the way, scale here. This is the index finger of the anatomist in a glove, her index finger. So her index finger next to the size of the vagal nerve, it's about, there's about 80,000 axons right there. And it goes down and does a fantastic job. Most of the signals that it sends up, it goes up and down. It sends signals down, it sends signals up. About 2/3 of the signals are coming up from the body and going into the brainstem and then around the brain. And that helps us to be integrated beings. And that's going back to what Greg talked about when we got started. And that's why this is so important to me. This is going back to Charlotte's question about the kids who have been abandoned potentially, and can they get back to being loving and be beloved again? And the answer is yes. And there's no commandment greater than these. We need to do a better job with our children, but even if we don't do a very good job, my sister is a NICU nurse. One of my sisters is a NICU nurse, and 50 years as a NICU nurse. One of her infants came in as a child with fetal alcohol syndrome, born at 7.5 months gestation, to an addicted mother. They worked with, and she was the NICU nurse, and then took the baby home to foster the baby for about 2 years as the mother went through rehab. And the mother got the baby back. And after about 6 or 8 months, she couldn't mother properly. And so the baby went back into the foster care system. And my sister Marianne said, enough of this, I'm adopting him. So we adopted him. How many people were at the adoption ceremony?
All of us, yeah, the whole family.
About 50 people showed up. The judge hadn't seen that many people. And it was a phenomenal experience. He was what, 6 years old, 5 years old?
Gonna be 28.
Yeah.
In a week.
And we went to a football game with him last week up in Corvallis. He's a marvelous young man and terribly handicapped when he was born. So we need to really believe in the power of love. It's not a secondhand emotion. It's not. Tina Turner believes it is a secondhand emotion because of her own traumatic experience in her very abusive marriage. And that's okay for her. And I think she got beyond it before she died. An important part of the vagal nervous system that I want you to know about is what we call co-regulation. A good psychotherapist, a good physician, a good nurse gets involved with their patient in a co-regulation situation where the therapist, physician, nurse is comfortable in their own skin. And as the anxious patient comes in and sits down or is in the bed, the comfortably in his or her own skin caregiver is there and being read by the patient, picking up the facial experiences, the facial expression, the breathing pattern of the caregiver, and experiencing relaxation. Part of that is this co-regulation we get out of oxytocin. Part of it, and the bigger part of it, is that the vagus nerve has innervated into sending signals back from our facial nerves. Joe, I don't know if you feel like talking about it, but Joe's a very experienced, now retired surgeon. And when you meet people, they're very anxious when they first come in. I've known you a little bit. I would imagine you present a very confident, comfortable, loving face to these people. You want to say something about what I'm talking about here?
Well, I think that's very important because you're absolutely right. When they come in, they're absolutely anxious. The first thing they want you to do is bond with them. Mm-hmm. And I found out when I was at Jewish Hospital at WashU in St. Louis that you sat down in front of them And even if it was just for 5 or 10 seconds, it meant a tremendous amount to them. Especially when they would say, I can't believe Dr. Matheson, he actually sat down and talked to me.
It's unfortunately too rare, and the doc doesn't get paid for that. But the good docs do it, and the good nurses do it, the good therapists do it. I'm going to call it a trick, but it's just picking up on what I talked about earlier. One of the things that I insist that my psychotherapy students learn is to get in sync with the breathing pattern of their patient. So the patient's sitting on the couch, anxious, getting ready to talk about something they never told anybody about before. They're very anxious about it. And the therapist's job is to first pay attention to the degree that you can pick up the breathing pattern of the person. And the breathing pattern is all up here in the intercostals to start with, because that's where our anxious breathing takes place. And the therapist is picking this up, and that's sending feedback through the vagal nervous system to the therapist, who's paying attention to that and has a sense of the anxiety level of the patient. And then the therapist does this. And in a close room, it shows up, right? I don't wear a muumuu when I do therapy, so it can't show up. And my facial expression changes, and I co-regulate. And that's what mom is doing here with the baby. She's feeding the baby's feeding her with oxytocin, going back and forth. But the mother's face and voice and smell are allowing the baby to feel the ultimate in safety, the ultimate in what the baby needs to thrive. And it's amazing to me how important these service dogs are for very badly damaged veterans. We have been abusing our veterans for the last 20 years. We've been sending them over time and time and time again, and they volunteer. It's their job. They're proud to do it. The IEDs, they don't escape the IEDs. They don't escape having civilians attack them and inadvertently killing civilians and feeling horrible about it. And they come home and they go back to their spouse and they sleep with a loaded gun on their nightstand. That's standard operating procedure for vets coming home from the battle scene. And it's really important for them to have somebody that's completely lovable to them, like this gentleman is. And hopefully the marriage survives, because that's the next step in becoming rehumanized. And then with children and continue that. And there's a lot of success going on. I don't want to say that these are permanently damaged people. They just need a lot more help than we are willing to give. The VA is stepping up and doing a better job than they used to, but there's still a long way to go. That's why I'm so up on that reboot thing I told you about earlier. Kind of gone on without making myself available to answer questions. Do you have any questions or thoughts or concerns you'd like to express? Yes, please.
My mother was a nurse for 45 years. And one of the things that she said that the medical community needed to really harness in and deal with were how companies who own the hospitals and what have you, they would call in these efficiency experts. And she always said, there's the efficiency experts, the hazard up. Because they would tell you how to, better or faster make a bed and everything else. But anytime you have the human element, she said, they don't know how to handle it. And in all those years, I mean, I saw her many times going in and just sitting or holding the hand of a patient, just physically being there is just amazing.
She was being human.
Yeah.
She brought
absolutely.
all of her humanity into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jerry.
How do you pronounce it?
Oxytocin?
Oxytocin, are there pills?
Yes.
Your Honor.
Well, and the one that's the problem is getting the oxytocin molecule into the brain. That's really difficult to do. It can circulate out here.
Okay.
And so one of the ways that's been developed is a nasal spray.
Oh.
And the problem is that we don't do a very good job picking up how much oxytocin is in the brain, so we don't know how to dose it.
Oh.
And there's a lot of research going on right now on that. I think we're still about 5 years away from being able to know what to do with that. One of the early targets is autism spectrum disorder.
What?
People on the autism spectrum disorder are being studied now in terms of the oxytocin nasal spray.
I don't think I need it.
But people on the spectrum do, and some folks are benefiting.
How does that affect regulation? Because sometimes when we artificially, like caffeine or other things, stimulants, if we give ourselves stimulants, then we actually downregulate how much our body makes for ourselves. And
Exactly.
so we have an adverse long-term effect or an extreme dependency upon it that maybe makes it harder for our own bodies to begin better at meeting that.
What is your name?
Joyce?
I didn't plant Joyce. It's exactly the question. She's asking about, how about overdosing? And how about getting dependent on it? How about having it lose its efficacy? And we actually have not solved that. But it's a major concern. What I'd like to do now is go ahead and go into the healthy hippocampus exercise and build off of this.
You want me to pass these out, or are you going to wait till the end?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead and pass.
Or
it
I can
out.
pass it
Yeah,
out.
that'd be great. Finally, brothers, this is whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. This is what I want you to do tonight. Follow this. What has happened during the day, I need to have you think about tonight before you drop off to sleep, and be thinking about that in a structured way. I'm going to pass this, or this is being handed out now.
Just passages.
Not that passage, but we're going to build on that passage. Go ahead and I'll leave that up. You can take the photo. So the neuroconsolidation is going on constantly. I want you to harness it when you drop off to sleep. This is the exercise. As you prepare for bed tonight, recall 3 good episodes from the day. One episode might have been this experience. Another episode might have been meeting somebody new. And I want you to have those in mind as you drop off. And by the way, the instructions that you're getting are what we're talking about here. Briefly bring each episode to mind. And the way I like to do it, I like to challenge people. And I'd like to structure it by using the, turn the page over to the rating scale. Peterson and Seligman have done some really wonderful work in positive psychology on character strengths and virtues. There are 24 character strengths organized into those 6 virtues. And I'd like you to go ahead and choose one of those that you'd like to work on tonight. Do a self-rating. Pick one of those you'd like to do tonight, where you are more, for instance, generous today than you were yesterday. And at least pick one. See if you can do something today where you're more generous today than you were yesterday, or whatever, more courageous. Whatever it is, whatever you'd like to work on. And I'd like you to stick with that for 30 days. It won't even take 30 days before you start to notice the difference. When I was teaching at Covenant Seminary, I would challenge students. I would ask students to volunteer. Are you in therapy right now? And students would say, yes, we are, because we require people being in therapy. Are you working on something, let's say anxiety? Is anxiety something you're working on? And a person would volunteer and they'd talk about it. I would assign them the positive character strength of courageousness. To be more courageous today than yesterday. What did you do something today where you're more courageous today than yesterday, and then bring that to mind as you drop off to sleep. it does several things. First of all, it gets in the way of ruminating about how you're not courageous, or ruminating about things that are completely unhelpful as you drop off to sleep. But it also changes your behavior, because over the course of the day, you're looking for the opportunity to be more courageous. And every semester I did this. I did this for 14 semesters. I never missed one of my students coming back the next week and say, yeah, it changed my life in a week. And that's the neuroconsolidation. That's the neuroplasticity neuroconsolidation taking place. And so you won't even need to go, the actual instructions are for go for 30 days. Please do that if you want to, but even just 7 nights in a row, you'll start to see some differences. And 3 is a big number, by the way. To do 3 things that are courageous today than you did yesterday, that's hard to do. And it's on purpose. I picked 3. Pick 1 to start with tonight. One of those character strengths that you can work on. I think we're ready for the meditation, and we'll wrap up.
Right. I'm trying to get the Healthy Hippocampus exercise to our people online, so it's on the.
I said it too.
It's been sent. Okay, so 100%. Awesome. Great. This is amazing stuff. I hope, like Len said, you're getting some practical steps if you want to take some practical steps with all this. He said earlier this might save your life, and I wonder if that's not. It sounded like an understatement at the time, but definitely make your life better. But if you are, struggling, this is an important step, I think, right? To health. I am doing this without Margie's help. Watch this. How about that? It's gonna be amazing. Yes, thank you. Yes. Nothing against you, of course. Did it come up? This right?
It's on the preview slide.
This again. Oh my goodness.
Go into SlideShare first.
SlideShare.
Doesn't matter, Greg. We're in the last 10 minutes.
Here you go. I got. How about that?
You did it.
Baby. All right. I like that. See, positive reinforcement is also good for the brain, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at this next slide. We already did the stuff. I want to just, Len gave you a great list. We're going to close with our last 5 minutes with a mindfulness exercise, which has also been studied as a technique for helping our cognition and helping our happiness, etc. At Bidwell Presbyterian Church, by the way, we actually did a study of this, of the effectiveness of mindfulness and its connection with the Christian spiritual tradition, and found positive correlations on both fronts. It was a grant-funded study we did. I think it was 8 years ago. So we're doing that now. So you had a great list from the Philippians text. I don't have that text up. I have another one that I want to highlight with you. The first part starts with clothing ourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. So in the Christian spiritual tradition, I'll do this little shorter version than others. I read those words and you let one sound out, see if one resonates with you. This is called Lectio Divina, divine reading. Compassion. So listen for one that's speaking to you. Compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience. And above all, it closes, put on love, which binds all in perfect unity. Are you feeling one that's resonating with you? So this is another way of doing the healthy hippocampus work. Compassion, kindness. I love these words, by the way. Humility, gentleness, patience. Above all these, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. If you got that word, let it resonate. We're going to take a moment to listen to what the writer C.S. Lewis says. Listen to that other voice, taking that other point of view, letting the other larger, stronger, quieter life come flowing in. So you're welcome to close your eyes if you want. This is a practice of mindfulness meditation. One of the key theorists and practitioners is John Kabat-Zinn, who's used this with stress and pain management. And mindfulness strives to keep us to focus on the present moment. Jesus said, let the day be sufficient for the day. The moment be sufficient for the moment. When it comes right down to it, Kabat-Zinn said the challenge of mindfulness is to realize that this is it. Right now is life. So again, if you want to take a moment to close your eyes, you're welcome to do that, whether you're online or in person. If you want to keep them open, I would recommend looking at something that's not too distracting. Let's take some breaths. Those deep breaths. I've been taught to take a deep breath and then take one more little breathe in to get deep as you then release that breath. One more breath. Now breathe out. One more in. Breathe out. It's just a mindfulness exercise. It helps us to now take stock of our minds, what's flowing in and out of them. What I'm asking us to do in this way of practicing mindfulness is to let flow in that word. I'm going to read it one more time. Clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience. Over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Let that marinate in your mind for a moment. Now just take stock of your breath once again. And may one of those good intentions focus our life for this afternoon. Thank you for coming today. Really enjoyed sharing what we love to talk about so much. And I hope you've enjoyed the connection between this tradition of spirituality and neuroscience. We ended on a nice calm moment, so I'm not going to fill it with lots of words, but please feel free to connect with us after. We'd love to talk with you a little more. And I hope you have a great time as you go on to the rest of your day. And thank you to our sponsoring organization. So thank you.